Okay, we're ready to kick off now if you would like to go ahead. So welcome everyone and thank you so much for joining today. So today is really about sharing the insights from our key panelists. So we have a great lineup today of some powerhouse leaders to give their perspective on building capability beyond the crisis. So I will just share my slides. So my name is Kylie Clarke and I am the Director of Business Event Management and Consultancy Company Evise. And we're really here today to talk about, as I said, building the capability beyond the crisis. And I've been a member of BWA for a year this month, and I'm very much delighted to MC this event. So I want to say a special hello to all my fellow Sydney-siders who are amid lockdown at the moment. And I really hope that you're all safe and well. And of course, a warm welcome to all the other attendees as well from other parts of Australia who have joined us today. So before we start our exciting panel discussion, we acknowledge that we are meeting on sacred and sovereign Indigenous land that has been lived, danced and celebrated on for over 120,000 continuous years. We pay our respects to all Indigenous elders past, present and emerging. We celebrate our Indigenous sisters in business. I pay respects to the Tharawal people whose land I am presenting on to you today from Narellan Vale, New South Wales. So BWA has a very important vision and mission. It's the collaborative nature of this community is phenomenal. Despite COVID, BWA has run over 80 events over the last 12 months. Most have ended up being online, and now we would be probably one of the most online active communities in Australia, showcasing the expertise and leadership of women in business. This is only possible because we work together to build a network of influence, always focused on raising the visibility of women. This is the focus of BWA and informs most of our program design. When we make female leaders visible to the wider business community, it is not only inspiring for others, it places women in a stronger position of influence. We share a love of lifelong learning and are generous with our knowledge. And so without further ado, I'm thrilled to present to you today's powerhouse lineup of panelists. So we have Shayne Nealon, Managing Partner of Peter Berry Consultancy. And Shayne Nealon is a Managing Partner of PBC. And with an early career in the airline industry, Shayne's interest in people, culture and organisational performance has led her to PBC, where she spearheads industry best practice in leadership programs, psychometric assessments, coaching and mentoring C-suite and research. We also have with us Kerrie-Anne Turner, who's the Executive Head, Telstra Enterprise Marketing and Commercial. Kerrie-Anne has a 30-year career in building and running technology businesses with her passion for leadership, building diverse and inclusive teams and organisations has seen her walk all over the world. This includes Asia, London and the US. Kerrie-Anne is currently a senior executive at Telstra and focuses on building and growing the Telstra Enterprise business. She is also the Deputy Chair of the eLead and Leadership Think Tank. And we also have with us today Danielle Dobson, who is the founder of Code Conversations. With her senior corporate financial expertise, experience of working in complex environments, business acumen and results-orientated style, Danielle is positioned to help leaders and teams rise to challenge and challenge and to achieve sustainable success. An author, speaker, coach and advocate, Danielle has 14 years corporate experience working in 4 countries as a CPA to a wide range of organisations from private practice to global 500 companies. So ladies, welcome. Lovely to have you all here today.
Thank you. Appreciate you hosting us.
More than welcome. So just a little bit of housekeeping as well today for the audience. We will have time for Q&A at the end, and I'll ask you just to raise your hand when you would like to ask a question, and then we can deliver that back to the panelists. In addition, we'll be joining the group at the end for some informal chats as well, if you'd like to stay around after we finish the panel discussion. So ladies, we're here today to explore the brave new world facing Australian organisations as we navigate a world of uncertainty and change. And very much so, Sydney has seen a lot of uncertainty and change in the last 4 to 6 weeks, and what we have coming up in the next 4 weeks as well. So let's start off, and I'll ask each of you, why are you here and why are you here now? So we might start off with you, Kerrie-Anne.
Thank you, Kylie. That is a really interesting question to ask, and one that can be answered so many ways. I guess, why am I here? A 30-year career in technology organisations often meant that I was, and in some cases still am, the only woman in a room. I entered technology when it certainly wasn't sexy. There was no such thing as a Google or an AWS or an Amazon when I started. So why am I here? It's a journey that's taken me some 30 years to navigate, but also an incredibly exciting journey because technology is cutting edge. I think we'd argue it has helped us through a pandemic and probably broken down some barriers that have taken us, or would have continued to taken us, significant time to break down. So why am I here now? I have the great pleasure of doing a little bit of work with Lynn, and thrilled that she's asked me to come along and join this panel. Hopefully what I can do is help give some insight to the technology lens, but also the deep diversity and inclusion leadership lens. My other passion, as you heard, I get to be a deputy chair for a leadership think tank, is spending time developing our future next gen leaders. So why now? Love to share with this group and certainly this panel a little bit of insight into my experiences, good, bad or indifferent. Thanks, Kylie.
Thank you. Thanks, Kerrie-Anne. So Shayne, we'll go across to you. So same question for you. So why are you here and why are you here now?
Thanks very much, Kylie. I suppose I'm here really because I'm very interested in working with a whole network of women that are passionate about making a difference, whether it's in their occupation or as a result of their background. For me, I suppose I've always been an activist in relation to equal opportunities and diversity from my early career days. In my 20s, I was very active in relation to that, where I saw quite a few injustices within the industry that I was working in, particularly around things like equal pay, access to maternity leave, access to superannuation, some of these things that we all take for granted now. For me right now, I'm the managing partner of a firm with 30 people, and also I have a network of associates throughout Australia and globally, plus distributors globally as well. So it is a passion to make sure that all of those diagnostics and everything have no adverse impact on people from different backgrounds, making sure that there's no adverse impact in relation to training opportunities and those sort of things. And I have a passion for research. I'm a bit of a data nerd. So COVID has been very interesting for us because we've been looking at the implications for individuals, teams and organisations post that. So certainly looking forward to hearing everybody's thoughts.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks, Shayne. And Danielle, so why are you here and why are you here now?
Great question, Kylie. Thank you. I'm here to learn from brilliant women and share anything that I can with brilliant women. So that's basically why I'm here, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. And also, behind that, like what's the steps behind? Well, I'm on a mission to bring more gender balance to the business world, to families and to our communities, and help women to create pathways to leadership and roles of influence without all that excessive judgment, guilt, frustration, and exhaustion. And why is that? Like, how did I get to this? I don't have the same sort of backgrounds as Shayne and Kerrie-Anne, but it all started about 4 years ago with a market research project. And I started it because I noticed that my executive coaching clients, who were women who were leading at work and also leading at home, were struggling with this tension around not feeling successful at work or at home. And it was making them feel like they were failing at everything that they were doing. They were feeling exhausted. They're on the way to burnout. And they were just speaking to me and telling me that it didn't matter sort of how much they gave and how much work they did. They just never felt like it was enough. So that really got me interested to learn what, about what's behind it. So I wanted to understand more. And I wanted to fix it. So I started interviewing women who are leading at work and leading at home. I had over 100 conversations and formally interviewed 50 women and a few men, including a few good men. And they're in senior leadership positions across a range of industries. And so CEOs, CFOs, CIOs, HRDs, a Telstra Businesswoman of the Year award winner, a politician, a neuroscientist, and a university professor, across a range of industries. And what I was learning during these interviews and what they were sharing, I thought needed to be shared more broadly. But it also brought up a whole lot of questions around, gender disparities, pay inequalities, and inappropriate treatment of women in the workforce, and how these disparities extended to home life. And for me, like growing up in the environment I did and working in engineering services, mostly in my finance career, I hadn't seen it till then. I hadn't experienced it. But when other people were talking about it, it just triggered something deep inside me. And I really wanted to help do something and ease their suffering. So then it sent me on this big exploration through time and science and history. And I discovered the gender code, that set of default beliefs where we pigeonhole women as supporters and carers and men as providers. And this, gender coding creates these all kinds of problems for all of us, because it stops all of us from stepping into our unique potential. So now what do I do with that? Well, that all resulted in a book, my book called Breaking the Gender Code, how women can use what they already have to get what they actually want. So I use everything that I've gathered in that book and practical frameworks to now work with businesses and focus on helping them see the impact of the gender code on their business and their people, and help them to expose it, decode it, and recode it. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, excellent. That's great. Thanks so much, Danielle. So we might kind of deep dive a little bit more. And Shayne, I'll go across to you with this question. So what are you seeing as the implications of the crisis on leaders in Australia and globally?
So I think the key thing for leaders have been that their workforce are quite stressed in one way or another. Mental health is certainly an issue, and the impact of people being able to maintain the resilience, and part of that resilience is also having that work-life alignment that Danielle was talking about as well. One piece of research that we did was actually around having a strategic focus. And what we did was we looked at 360 data about pre and post COVID. And what we found out that people had moved, although the scores are very similar in the overall numbers, people had moved towards high operational, low strategic. So this is a major issue for organisations who don't maintain their strategic focus, looking for new opportunities. Teamwork pretty much becomes the next phase after the fact that leadership is essential, leading a high-performing team. And what we know is leadership drives engagement, drives performance. So if the leaders aren't in front with the strategy, people we see and we believe are struggling far more to feel engaged with the organisation. Successful companies seem to be investing in technology and more digital application, and I think we've all done that anyway. But I think the investment into some of those areas is very, very important. And maintaining and developing their talent, right, is a key thing going forward, because, you know, there are some talent issues, and I'm happy to discuss it a bit later. There's also this issue of a feeling of lack of visibility. So we are getting research data back about people being concerned about being overlooked for promotions, not being as visible in the workforce, new people within the organisation running induction programs have had to be extended out. There's not necessarily that same degree around that. What we do know, but from a business perspective, is after every war and every sort of crisis that there is an uptick, a big uptick, and you've got to make sure you're on the uptick. And a lot of the work that McKinsey have been doing, Harvard have been doing, and an interesting thing in the US, and I think we'll probably don't have the data here in Australia to the same degree, is that there has been a massive increase in small businesses and people setting up businesses in the US economy. Actually, self-employed has actually doubled post the pandemic. So I think part of those needs around, you know, the skills you've got now obviously aren't the skills that may be in the future. But there certainly is a feeling that there's going to be a two-speed recovery. And it just depends where these people are as they go through that two-speed. It'll be the same for workers, consumers and organisations. But I think at the end of it, we'll probably come out more highly productive. And that's certainly the prediction that McKinsey have said. It seize the moment or you'll miss being on the upturn.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember before, Shayne, that you did mention about there's a lot more small businesses and people going and starting their own business versus working for organisations. And given the, I guess, uncertainty that COVID offers us, that's very much understandable in that space. Mm-hmm. So Kerrie-Anne, I might jump across to you and just touch on something that Shayne mentioned before about investing in technology, and this is very much in your space. So broadly speaking, if we've undertaken 10 years of digital transformation in weeks during the pandemic, what happens if my organisation hasn't adopted technology to deliver both customer value and employee benefits?
Thanks, Kylie. And to quote Winston Churchill, and I think Shayne, never waste a good crisis. We did, and my lens again is from global multinational and technology organisations, and I'm currently with Telstra. So again, that gives me an increased lens around the telco space and the technology space as well. I think broadly speaking, it is never too late to think about the technology strategy to capitalise on those opportunities. We know that at least when we look at some of the research we've done with our customers, we know technology innovation and investment has been spurred by the crisis. One, there was a need. Obviously, everybody's working from home, so the obvious technology investments occur. We're sitting on one today as an example. But beyond that, organisations we found begun to break down silos. And what I meant by that is typically you'd see at least in my line of work, you know, the tech team and the CIOs ferreting away in the basement and not necessarily seen as those drivers of transformational change inside organisations. That was progressively changing before the pandemic, but I would deeply argue not fast enough. So a couple of things happened. One, we proved we can move faster when we need to. And second of all, the ability to drive technology for better outcomes, particularly for our employees. I think that the results are in. We know that our employees, through the use of technology, will have an opportunity to do things, as Shayne mentioned a moment ago, that evolution of balance that's occurring. And when, certainly as we've come out of the lockdowns, the various state lockdowns we've had, and there was a sense of normality occurring around the nation, what was really interesting is to watch, particularly big organisations like Telstra, not going back to those old ways of working because of those technology investments focused on employees, but also accelerating things like IoT and autonomous vehicles, to drive autonomous vehicles on mine sites. Wouldn't it be great if you could have your FIFO workers who could do their work from a location other than the mine? There's a huge safety implication for that as well, if you think about what boards think about from a safety perspective as well. So I think coming back to, is it ever too late? It's never too late to invest in a technology strategy. And I think what I would be doing at the forefront of that is thinking about two things. How does technology allow me to attract and retain talent? And how does it allow me to access those new markets we heard Shayne talking about? I think, Shayne, you were saying it has doubled the opportunity, or sole proprietors. I think that's what I heard you say. Where does that allow us to capture new opportunities that we hadn't otherwise thought about? And I think then thinking about your technology strategy to support that, because certainly it's very daunting. Most of us aren't technologists that are on the call, and I prefer to think about it as with a lens that isn't a technology lens. It's a business lens. It's an outcome lens. What is the outcome I need for my employees, and what is the outcome I need to grow my business? And then we think about how technology becomes an enabler to solve that. And then you partner with some really smart people, to help you go do that, because your expertise is growing the businesses you're in. And there's plenty of great experts who can help you on your technology journey. Thanks, Kylie.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kerrie-Anne. That's really interesting. And yeah, tech is here, but tech is absolutely here to stay, definitely moving forward. And so Danielle, we'll go across to you. So is it important to keep gender equity on the business agenda when it seems that there are so many competing demands and priorities for leaders right now? And if so, why?
Great question. So absolutely, it is so important to keep gender equity on the business agenda right now. And, it's interesting because looking at this pre-pandemic, and then even at the start of the pandemic when it started last year, I was having these conversations where it's like, we'll put in gender, diversity, inclusion. We can't focus on that right now because we've got to get through this pandemic. And I understand that. These competing, like you mentioned, competing demands and priorities. What's happened throughout the pandemic is, and with the options for working from home, working remotely, and looking at all the the challenges that women and everyone has faced, but in specific, particular women, but looking at how they've risen to the occasion, and looking at how now there has opened up really great opportunities at the highest levels of organisations to build in working from home and flexibility policies, and not only that, but paid parental leave. So the CEO of KPMG on his first day sanctioned or released information on a paid parental leave policy, which is paid parental leave for mothers and fathers, or both parents, not gender specific, which is huge. That's huge. So if we look at look at it now in the middle of this post-pandemic or after it's all happened and kicked off, and now our reality here now, gender and gender balance and having diversity of thought and processes is so crucial for leaders, because it's actually going to help them to meet those business demands and be able to prioritize business objectives to get the results they want. And it's kind of like a no-brainer, because if you think about it, like when I speak to CEOs and leaders of businesses, there's a lot that's keeping them up at night right now, as you'd imagine. And there always has been, but during this pandemic in particular, around dealing with uncertainty and like Shayne, she's got the great robust data, you know, behind that, of how that's all manifesting. And, you know, what I find those is through these discussions and what I've learnt and researched is that it can a lot of the challenges can be distilled down to three sort of big ones. So how do I deliver sustainable returns to investor groups? How do I mitigate risk and reputational risk? And how do I make sure my people are performing? So even in this pandemic now, looking at that, those are the three sort of key areas that, you know, keep CEOs and business leaders up at night. And so if we look at addressing those and, you know, the potential, you know, positive outcomes. So what do they want? They want to keep investor groups happy. They want to hit their targets, build a great brand, mitigate risk, and keep good people, talented people. Like, you know, Kerrie was saying, there is a real talent. No, sorry, Shayne was saying too, there's a talent issue here, a skill shortage. So they want to do that. And then they want to make sure they have high performing teams. So the reason why I reiterate too that during the pandemic, this all became a lot more important is that investor groups and you know, shareholders are making a lot more noise and being a lot more demanding around companies engaging in positive behaviour, and especially around gender. Why is that? Because study after study, both here and internationally, shows us that having women in leadership roles is not only the right thing to do, but it's a business imperative. And my favourite report from that was one done by Bankwest Curtin Economic Centre. It was done last year during the midst of the lockdowns, and they used a world-leading data set from the Workplace Gender Equality Agency here in Australia. And that data is collected from 11,000 businesses in Australia. And they used that information for this report, and it revealed that there's a causal link between greater gender diversity and business performance, and in particular profitability, performance and productivity. So when there's an increase in female leadership, that's the result. So if we're looking at investor returns and capitalising on opportunities, and, you know, like Shayne was saying about increasing productivity, then as an example of how those stats play out, having more senior women in top tier leadership roles can add like 6.6% to the market value of an ASX company. So that can, you know, depending on the size of the company, that can be 80, you know, 60, 70 million dollars a year. So that is why it's really important to, you know, bring more women in, and attracting more women. Having more women attracts more women, which will build brand, strong reputation, become an employer of choice, and tap into that talent pool. And something that's working really well for that the smart organisations have worked out, like KPMG, is that offering that flexibility around remote working and parental leave attracts the best and the brightest. That is something that is coming up too in other conversations around looking at job opportunities. If there's no flexibility, this is anecdotal, it's rated more highly flexibility than pay. So that's where people have changed their value system through this. So the smart organisations understand that. And then the other great thing is having more women in leadership and diverse thinking brings a different type of management style. And it can help get the best out of people and build high performing teams. And you know, don't just take my word for it. So we've got the evidence in terms of the hard data from WGEA, but also I found in my research that women who are parents as well or care for others bring a unique skill set. And this is why it's so important to make sure through this pandemic that we keep good women. Because everyone that I spoke to said that becoming a parent fundamentally changed them. And that wasn't a surprise, because that happened to me too. But what I did find surprising is how they told me that their contribution at work and also their leadership style changed for the better once they became a parent. And this had a really positive impact on everyone around them. And so for many, like becoming a parent was integral to help them build empathy, self-awareness and self-regulation, which is emotional intelligence training 101, becoming a parent. So that's why we need to support more women, to be able to work remotely and flexibly. And then they also build up strengths like critical thinking, creativity, flexibility, adaptability, efficiency, all those sorts of things that are critical skills needed in the workplace, in leadership, and all areas of life. So supporting women through this and through the pandemic and opening up these opportunities and bringing those unique skills into the workplace is a leadership asset that businesses can leverage.
Yeah, that's amazing, Danielle. Like those statistics around, having women in those top tier leadership positions, around the profitability and increased revenue, that's phenomenal. Not surprising, but phenomenal. So Shayne, kind of touching on some of the key points that Danielle just mentioned there. You mentioned before about maintaining and developing talent. So what are the impacts on businesses regarding retaining talent?
Yeah, look, I think there's been a bit of a wake up in Australia, to be honest. We relied so heavily on immigration, and all of a sudden that dried up. So, if you think about it, there's, quite a lot of skill shortages around manufacturing, construction, technology, and talent more broadly. So all of a sudden, Australia's had to come to terms with the fact that people aren't coming in. There is a need for skills development, number one. Number two is that they need to retain the talent that they have. So what we have seen is an uptick in development of talent within organisations, which I think is actually a positive. We've actually had more 360s completed with coaching programs than we have in pre-pandemic. So I think that's a really interesting statistic. The other aspect around that 360 is that women do better on 360s. And that's not just in Australia, that's globally. From a data set of 22,000 people, women unilaterally, regardless of what country you're in, actually perform better on 360s. So interesting, like where we are in this post-pandemic, they tend to be very operational and not necessarily making themselves visible for the more strategic roles. And part of that is obviously their availability to combine that work-life alignment that Danielle was talking about. I mean, I've been coaching some fantastic young women, and a woman I spoke with actually earlier today who's on a high potential program, she said, I now feel really pumped because we had a session with her and her manager, and he said, I don't want you here at 7 o'clock in the morning. I actually don't want you. I don't need you here. So she now feels totally, we had took her through her personality and her 360, and we had a three-way conversation about her performance. And I know she will be a director one day in that organisation because, they're investing a lot of money and time into a cohort, quite a reasonable cohort. Now, I think that would have happened before anyway, but it has accelerated it because they can't rely on external. It's very competitive in the marketplace at the moment. The market, it doesn't matter where you're looking, even in my field, organisational psychologists. So graduates, I think, are going to be a lot of demand because I think people will focus a lot more on the talent pipeline within a business. And we're seeing that for advice around pipeline talent activity and also graduates. So, and all the state governments have had increases in the interest actually in graduate programs that are quite structured. And some of them are getting really creative to have, the graduate program with a little bit more qualifications at the end of the program, enabling them to stay with the organisation from a skill perspective as well. So in one way, it meant that, we haven't had the talent we need to be potentially where we are. But the other way is I think there's a greater focus in organisations on talent than we've had before.
Yeah, that's great. And when you were mentioning just before about there's been more 360s completed in the last 12 to 18 months and that women perform better, do you have any thoughts around why women outperform men in 360s?
I think they're quite conscientious, to be honest. And I think they, and probably the EQ is a bit better. What Danielle was talking about. I think they one thing we know they don't do, they don't self-promote within business as much, so that they need to, and programs need to give them, what is this executive presence that they need to have. So it's a little bit of an easier path. So I think I read something that Thomas Simon from Music, who does a lot of work in this talent and women's space, said, women don't need coaches, they don't need sponsors as much. They actually need opportunities. And people in more senior roles need to start looking down, looking sideways, without saying we'll put you on a particular program. It almost means that, and some organisations have had very successful diversity programs where they have broadened the talent out, not just for women, but more gender development and gender flexibility and a whole range of those. I heard a CEO say, we're a white Anglo-Saxon company that employs white Anglo-Saxon men. They are not our customers, and they are not the future workforce that we need to be successful and competitive globally. And I thought, wow, that's great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Shayne. So moving across to you, Kerrie-Anne, do you think moving through a crisis such as COVID has changed how we view our customers and employees? And if so, what role does leadership play in that equation?
The immediate response to that is categorically it's changed. And it has changed our view of our customers and our employees. And I think the flip side to that is my biggest fear is that if we think about the individuals who lead our largest organisations across Australia, they typically still fit into that, as Shayne described it, white Anglo-Saxon male category. I think Harry Triguboff is a great example from Meriton, who I think in an article a few months ago described employers or organisations as parasites who allowed individuals to keep the flexibility post-COVID. His argument was you needed to come back into the office. So I think how we view our customers and how we view opportunities to grow business with our customers and how we view our employees has shifted, and it's an imperative that we don't allow it to shift back. Thinking about where the balance of power is around the gender dynamic and the individuals who run our largest organisations, they have the power to take us back. I think the opportunity for us is to continue to move forward, and that's where leadership comes into play at all levels of the organisation. And I think we have, and I think Shayne, you said it when we started, leading through a crisis was critical. Those who had the strategy and the vision and the ability to lead both with empathy and think about the care of their customers and care of their employees are the ones that have survived and thrived through the process. And I personally was part of that. I took on an acting managing director role for a big global multinational in my previous role, just as the pandemic hit, leading 500 individuals in an acting role, mind you, through this pandemic, and we had to grow and deliver the business outcome. So it certainly tested my leadership, but it also showed that it was more important to lead and lead the individuals through that and have a connected conversation or a connected vision from where we are now through to each milestone, and be very transparent in the communications, but also be very authentic and vulnerable in that we all don't know what's going to happen. But what we do know is, we have an ability through the technology that we sell to help customers and help employees of our customers. And we have an incredible ability, given our balance sheet, to support you as our employees through this. So that's what we're going to do. And so leadership was incredibly important through that. And I'll argue that my single biggest success through that leadership challenge was my ability to lead the team through that process. And it certainly challenged me, because I certainly didn't have all the answers as we were doing midnight crisis management teams, thinking about the impact and the safety and security as governments in various different state locations changed rules, upped rules. We had to think about our employees, and sometimes work was a safer place than home for our employees. Having to bear the weight of those decisions as a leader makes you a leader, but it also helps you learn a lot about yourself as you go through that process. So I think we have categorically thought about our customers differently. And I thought about our customers a little bit differently as we went through 2020. I remember talking to a CIO of a health firm, and we were in the business of selling software. And this particular firm had a significant renewal due with us, which meant they had to pay more money, significant amount of more money, to keep our software operational in their environment. And our sales team were really struggling to get them to pay, and that had disastrous consequences for them, because it meant their costs went up significantly. The technology that we sold would potentially stop working and pose significant risk for their businesses. And they said, we can't get them to buy, and I picked up the phone and called the CEO, and I did something. I didn't ask him for anything. I said, how can we help? We're a technology organisation. We can help you set up field hospitals. We can help you, get, your assets into the field faster by setting up networks, technology, technology infrastructure to help you execute that. Would that help you? Because then wasn't the time to sit there and ask a customer for something monetary, when we all had an obligation to lead through this and help our communities and help our individuals through it. So it was a very different experience when you're in a sales organization and selling technology. Certainly having to justify up above why I wasn't going to, close a multi-million-dollar deal was difficult, but it was the right thing to do. And of course, then you have a customer for life, because you showed up and asked them, how could you help? So that to me was incredibly important. So I think that's where leadership plays an incredible role. And I really do hope, and Shayne, I hope through your research and the work that you do in your consulting really helps us ensure the leaders of our organisations across Australia really don't go back to that old world thinking of, how we should show up for business to serve our employees and our customers. I mean, I shuddered to see that Trigger Bop headline. You can Google it. It was pretty horrific. We can't go back to that. And we can't go back to that, because that has huge diversity and inclusion challenges and issues. So that to me is how fundamentally we've changed, and why leadership is really important through that process.
Yeah, thank you, Kerrie-Anne. And just from my experience, I know that the last 18 months is very much about, in that leadership space, about building those relationships. And, that's a perfect example of, going saying, how can we help you versus this is what we can give you. It's like, kind of building that between the two organizations. So I think I have time for one more question before we go to the audience. So Danielle, what are the 3 key steps leaders can take to make a big difference?
Great question. And you know what? I had some different things until I've just listened to Shayne and Kerrie-Anne.
Your new 3 big things.
My new 3 big things,
yeah.
Based on what they've been saying, is to get curious. So understand, more about, everyone in your organisation, your customers, your suppliers. So just get curious about asking questions. And Kerrie-Anne has said before. So open communication and a two-way street. Not this is how it's done kind of thing. And then working out, what's most important, like to the organisation. So, and it might sound a bit sort of generic, but vision, values, and culture. So post pandemic, in this world we're now living in, what's most important to our leadership, to our clients, but also to our people? Because, and this goes back to the two-way conversation, not often are people asked, and actually we're seeing with people wanting to come back into the office or not, and all kinds of executions, that an actual individual approach is required by leaders. And this goes back to what Kerrie-Anne was saying about Shayne, helping help leaders learn how to do better and build relationships. But it requires a very one-on-one approach, person by person, context by context approach. So working out what's most important, and then also being creative. Like, look at what these guys have been talking about here, about getting creative, going outside the box and the normal coding and algorithm that how we run business and how we do things, and thinking differently. It's just being innovative and creative. I mean, creativity just came up with both of those stories that Kerrie-Anne and Shayne shared. So they're kind of the general things. I do have some actual practical things, but I think tying up what we've been talking about, I think they're the key 3 things.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Thanks, Danielle. So now we might go to the audience for questions. So I can't see everyone's name's quite small, so I might just get you to shout out your name and your question for the panel, please. Do we have any questions? I might go to you, Lynn. Do you have any thoughts or comments on what's been discussed?
Yeah, I did raise my hand, so I'm not sure if you're seeing the hand raising, but certainly thank you very much, ladies. That was really insightful from each of your different perspectives, and from the technology and the people and the client perspective that Kerrie-Anne shared, right through to leadership and what we're doing from an operational strength point of view, and particularly the role of women in those strong operational roles that Shayne's finding through the 360-degree research. And then, of course, the wonderful reminders around the value of diversity and inclusion that Danielle brings, and those beautiful insights that she brings to the conversation. One thing that came up for me in particular was I'm obviously very interested. I've got a similar background to Kerrie-Anne Turner, and I'm always interested in new technologies. And I wondered if Kerrie-Anne could share with us, her views from a Telstra Enterprise point of view as to whether or not the client base that she's seeing, it's very new in her role, though I do know that, but in terms of the adoption of virtual reality and artificial intelligence, that's something that, I was looking at our technology here and I thought in a few years' time, we're going to look at this platform, and even though it's been a wow moment today, seeing everyone in this new kind of format, wouldn't it be amazing if we could have some sort of virtual presence where we actually feel like we're sitting, like we're starting to see in the entertainment industry? I'd like to throw that to Kerrie-Anne and see, is she seeing organisations starting to build that into their capability for the future, their technology planning?
That's a really good question. If we look at Gartner, one of the technology industry analyst firms, the increasing investments in technology they saw post-pandemic were data and, as you'd expect, data and BI, business intelligence, cyber security, was the next highest at 57. Data was at about 73%, and cloud, investing in cloud technologies at 50. So those traditional suspects are where you'd expect them to be at the top of the, top of the food chain. But what's really interesting is we work with Microsoft and the Azure team on an incredible piece of technology called digital twins. So what we mean by that is if you think about replicating something in the virtual world or the digital world that you have in the physical world, what's the application of that? Think about a building, right? Think about the buildings where we're in at the moment. Imagine if you could have a digital representation of that building so that you could manage that representation and manage that building in a way that didn't require you to physically be present. So the application becomes really, really interesting when you think of safety and security, when you think of, anything that you need to do where you don't necessarily want to be physically present. We're at a point now where technology is pretty much there to allow us to create a digital twin of, that particular asset. It could be a digital twin of a jumbo jet that is sitting on the other side of the world, as an example, that needs to be serviced. It could be, it could have many applications. I think in terms of, virtual reality, I think it's interesting. I think it's more of a, has more applicability in a consumer environment going forward than it does necessarily in an enterprise environment. But that AI and machine learning, when you put those two things together, and you can get systems to be smarter and begin to learn actions and behavioral, responsibly, of course, behaviorally, then suddenly you have an ability to take technology to a different level. So what might be an example of that? Think about, again, IoT devices, driving autonomous vehicles, so you've got an IoT, some sort of sensor, IoT stands for Internet of Things, some sort of sensor sitting in an autonomous vehicle, allowing you to do things in an environment that you wouldn't necessarily want to put a person into that environment. So I think as we begin to explore the new realms of technology, there is certainly more requests from our customers coming in to do things incredibly differently and asking us to think about how we might solve some of our largest problems from a technology perspective. And, we do see that, whether it's cyber from a government perspective, from a national, how do we make sure from a citizen's perspective we have a digital platform that allows us to securely engage with, with our citizens. Think about this COVID payment that's happening at the moment. Wouldn't that be easy to do that digitally from your phone in a matter of 30 seconds? That type of thinking. If we think about safety and security, and we think about cities' facial and digital recognition and video technology allowing us, that's all artificial intelligence and machine learning technology. Thinking about how we can protect our citizens, particularly if we think in the context of women and what we've seen in the past, being able to have an ability to drive outcomes that allow us to drive up protections of our citizens. But not only that, an ability to actually give great experiences for people. Coming back to that, almost like that VR thing, you might have noticed Oprah has done a bunch of interviews, green screen interviews, where it looks like she's actually sitting next to the individual next to them. And they're not, and they're on other sides of the world. That is incredible technology that's the evolution of the technology, and that, virtual reality of sorts, I suppose you'd call it, is allowing us to have different experiences as well. So we're certainly seeing it emerging, and with, organisations like Google and Amazon and Microsoft in Australia really driving that forward, I think we're going to see a lot more of it.
Great. Thank you so much. Is there any questions? Hi. Any other questions? Yeah.
Yes. And I apologize if I actually.
I know who that is. It's Martina. How are you?
Yes. Hi. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
I was just about to all studying all the security safe plays for next year for Microsoft. So I kind of feel like my question here, and I'm really interested because as I was hearing, I can see that the customer actually now really needs to navigate, and especially leaders really needs to navigate into these shifting worlds where you know, hybrid work and hybrid workspace is really become the new normal, right? And where there's a lot of shortage of security, like skills professionals. So you know, I was actually, while I was studying all these topics, which are really you know, actuals, given all the, you know, governments, new regulation and policies that companies need to, you know, to apply. So basically, I was trying to get like the connection, how this could be like a potential opportunity for women, no? And especially young women, you know, to enter this world, which to me, on a long-term vision, really, I agree, goes into security and safety, security, data management and government, and of course, compliance. So compliance and security should go together from now on. So yes, I guess my question here, if I can get your vision on these, on how the two things can become an opportunity for us women. And yes, that's it.
So if I understood the question correctly, there was a skills question in there. So Shayne, jump in, of course. But the question I heard, Martina, was there is an opportunity in technology, and there's an opportunity with the convergence of certainly security and cyber and all of the applications of it. And so was the question, what do we think about the opportunity, or how do we address the skills gap?
Yeah, I guess that to me is exactly this. So how we address these skills and how we can make these, you know, an opportunity for women in the future. So what could be, in your point of view, you know, what could be for you on a career point of view, like the areas where maybe good to, you know, invest your time in learning? You know, I'm working in IT as well. So, you know, here, for example, myself, I'm studying a lot on security, cyber attacks, compliance. So, you know, all these sales plays and challengers. So I guess, yes, I'm interested to get your view on that.
Well, I think, first of all, it is desperately important we have more women in tech and STEM. So thank you. I think I'll defer to Shayne on how we address skills gap, and you'd be interested, Shayne, if you have a position on the technology skills gap that we see in the nation as well. But in terms of my view, I think we are and we continue to find today significant gaps, men or women, in our ability to find the right skills to help us, at least on our service our customer needs in both a security and a cloud perspective. They're very hot skills and roles that are required right now. What keeps me up at night is how to get more women interested in those areas and those fields, because we don't go to high school and go, well, I want to be a cybersecurity analyst, or, you know, I want to be a cloud, you know, architect. And we often talk about the technology aspect as being, you know, gosh, that's boring. It's not. I've had multiple different roles in technology, everything from senior leadership to leading consulting teams, to leading marketing organizations, to leading sales organizations, to leading professional services organizations. So there is so much opportunity for us. And we spent a lot of time in my previous role of really targeting emerging, and I know we have a phenomenal lady on the call from ANU. I heard that in the early banter as we entered. Young women who are doing their degrees at the moment, getting them really, you know, interested in a conversation around security. And we over-rotated with our grad program to say, we actually don't necessarily want you to have the tech skills, because we figure as a tech company we can teach you that. We want you to have business skills. We want you to have, you know, business analyst skills, because our customers want us to solve problems. The coding bit and the bits that go with deploying the technology, I would argue, are probably the easier bits, because it's a path well trodden. So my advice would be thinking about the business aspect and the business acumen around solving problems and connecting that to your security skills. That's going to make you very, very valuable. But Shayne, I'd be interested in your perspective from the skills gap perspective.
Yeah, I was talking to a COO that I'd worked with her for over a couple of, she's moved between 3 different companies. As you do, you develop those relationships. She currently has 44 open coder positions, and the business has grown enormously. She's come up with some really creative ways to go about it. They're actually sort of picking up your point, Kerrie-Anne. They're actually training people who aren't coders to be coders. Even people who they're really just reskilling them. So we'll train you for 3 months, right, on the job training. And part of that is obviously the big piece around security, cyber security. I mean, boards now, that's a requirement. That's one of the big requirements for boards, where your data's stored, who has access to it, how long is it retained. I mean, we have, for our diagnostics, we have to have them on 3 different platforms globally, because the Europeans only want in Europe. Australians want it in Australia, not so much the businesses, but government does. And then the US, people don't like their data being on the US platform. So we actually give people the opportunity to which platform, which server that they want to go into. And one of our clients even has a server within a server within a server, and it has to be in a particular European location. So this is a big issue that clients are grappling with. And I think that skill issue, it's only going to be people reskilling out of areas that no longer have. The main thing, I think, if you can put a talent, a pipeline of promotion and a pipeline of career together for people to attract them, I think that's the key, to be honest. And interesting, she said, they've had almost all their workforce has been working remotely. They're both based in Melbourne. But she said, we've managed to do it. But she said, I don't sleep so well because I've got 44 open positions right now.
Thanks, Shayne. So Kathy or Nicole, any comments or thoughts from you before we move on?
Yeah, I'd just like to touch on the point of not going back, making sure that these skills that we've now all obtained, things like Zoom and the changing of people's ideas and looking at particularly working from home. It used to be you had to be a tiny little business, or you were seen as a tiny little business if you were working from home, whereas now it's definitely been normalised. And as we've just heard, very large businesses have all their staff working from home. So I think that that's really important, and particularly that we touched on it earlier about making sure that the advances that we have got with COVID are not then rolled back, because now we can, when we're able, should be able to go back into offices and that sort of thing, taking those flexibilities away and then reducing some of those just privileges that we've been able to have with the flexibility and that sort of thing. So I think that's really important, that these milestones are not rolled back, and I just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And Shayne, I had a question for you just on something you mentioned earlier about the increase in small businesses and sole proprietors. Do you have any thoughts, or you probably have research and statistics to back, but the reasons behind why people are going out on their own?
Well, I think people had that sense of security being part of a bigger organisation. And all of a sudden, particularly in the US, and this primarily that data related to the US, all of a sudden it gave them that opportunity to say, well, I've always wanted to do this, or maybe I want to do that. And I think that's why new businesses themselves have doubled, just new businesses. A lot went under, but certainly, the new businesses have completely doubled. So, and that comes out of the work done by McKinsey's actually. So you can probably pick that up in more detail. I do want to make a comment about the combination of, I think hybrid's going to be here. There's no question about that. There is a very, I think particularly for women and people of different, ethnic origins and all that, the C-suite still look a lot the same, right? And visibility will still need to be maintained for people wanting to grow their careers. And I think that's going to be important. A friend of mine said to me, look, recently, she said to me, the board were in the office, the CEO wanted something, and this was when we were working hybrid, and he said he went 3 floors down before he could find someone to help them with something that they needed done. And of course, that person personally knows the CEO now. Mm. And, it was an interesting comment. And then a couple of other people in large corporations have said to me, women need to keep up the visibility, if anything more than ever before, because they tend to not have this longer systemic networks within the organisations. And I don't think unless we get 50% of women on boards and 50% of women in parliament and 50% of women in executive roles within organisations, in my first senior role, the CEO said to me, do you think you can wear a bright colour to an event? And I go, what are you talking about? And he goes, I want all the women, because it was a merged organisation, that have come with me to wear something bright. And I'm going to ask you to stand up because all the rest of the people in the room are going to be men. And I thought that was really interesting because we were going to arrive in our normal black suits and white or blue shirts, But he was very conscious of supporting women through their careers.
That's really interesting. I'd have to go buy a new outfit because black is the only thing I really wear. So unless we have any more questions or comments from the audience, or I guess we'll do any last thoughts or comments from the panel. What are your parting thoughts? We'll go with you first, Kerrie-Anne.
Oh gosh, now you put me on the spot.
Sorry.
I think something in, just a passing thought in terms of, if we think about what we're here today to discuss is, building capability beyond the crisis. I think there's one message I'd leave is, first of all, you actually can't treat inequality equally. It's my fundamental opinion. So we need to stop fixing women. How about we just promote them? That's the first thing. And I think building that capability beyond the crisis and taking that approach is something that I want to leave you all with. Second of all, is a comment on leadership. And I think at the end of the day, our greatest leadership capabilities emerge through this crisis. So I'd encourage everyone to hang on to those. Hang on to what you learnt, because it would be incredibly valuable to lead and grow your businesses, into the next 10 years.
Thank you. Thanks, Kerrie-Anne. And Shayne, we'll go across with you. Your last thoughts or comments.
I honestly think that seize the opportunities, whatever they are, in your business, anywhere. You can either sort of tread water, as I said, or you can really push forward. Are there new markets you can go into? Is there something different that you could do? Is there, and there's really 3 aspects. One is developing the talent within or within yourself, your relationships with your broader network, because that's an enormous advantage to people. And then looking after your customers and think of new and creative ways to touch customers. For us, we've we've had our research people working overtime when to try and keep up with that type of aspect.
Great, thank you, Shayne. And Danielle, thoughts from you?
Thanks, Kylie. I'm going to go a little bit different, like more personal, I guess, like one-on-one. So I think one of the most important things to do is, first of all, if you're not there yet, to accept this as reality, and understanding that acceptance isn't necessarily approval. So we might not, like the way everything is right now, and having snap lockdowns and all of that it creates. But accepting this as reality, and rather than using energy to fight this reality, harness it to create the opportunities, like Kerrie-Anne and Shayne were saying. Use this opportunity, but accepting it is the key. And then working out, once you've done that, working out what's most important to you personally. What do you value the most? What's those things that really light you up, that will help you, go in the direction that you need to go, like Shayne mentioned, and use those things, or that one thing that's most important to you, as an internal compass, and make every decision from there, because then you know that every decision you make will be the right one because you made it.
Great. Yeah, no, that's a really good piece of advice. So before I do the final wrap up, I just want to say thank you so much to the panel. So thank you so much, Kerrie-Anne, Shayne and Danielle, for your insights today, and of course your time. It's been a really great conversation, and great to hear your thoughts and your perspectives. And I feel the time this evening has gone so quickly this afternoon. So thanks again, and you ladies can jump across to the main room, and I will do the final wrap up. So thanks so much again for your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Okay, so we're just now going to just do some wrap up and just talk a little bit more about BWA before I jump across as well and say hi to everyone face to face. So just around the shared values of BWA, being a female designed, managed and operated social enterprise, BWA was built upon the values that reflect the strength of what underpins the majority of important soft skills. It is these shared values that sit at the core of what connects us together, and is demonstrated by our behaviour as leaders and aspiring leaders in the business community. And for me, that really resonates because when I first joined my very first Friday Freefall just on 12 months ago, and met with the amazing bunch of women that were online that day and led by Lynn, I very much felt everything that's mentioned there in the shared values, and I very much saw the inclusion and diversity, and more than anything, I really felt the authenticity that BWA was, and the opportunities that were there to connect with the great leaders, and also to grow myself as a leader. So very much those shared values, they're not just a list of great words, but they're very much true to what BWA is. And so the benefits of joining BWA, either as a classic or premium member, and one of the best things is being part of a very supportive community of professional friends. We are there to be each other's eyes and ears in the market, share opportunities, introductions and research with each other, and also to hold a space when things get tough as well. And having experienced businesswomen to use as a sounding board and to tap into their knowledge and expertise is priceless. So one of the great things about being a member of BWA is the opportunity you have to access the Torrens University courses for free. And that's an amazing partnership between BWA and TUA. And this partnership is a very special one because, as I mentioned, you get online short courses at no extra cost. There are nearly 40 short courses and you can do them in an hour or two each. And when you add it all up, I think it's over $1,400 in terms of the short courses if you were to go and complete every single one of those. And the learning is there online for all members and can be accessed at any time as well. So it's self-paced learning. There are lots of online events that are coming up in the next few weeks. We have the ones that are there in red are the events that are online in on the BWA website, and then those in the black are the face-to-face events. You'll see that we have the Building Capability Beyond the Crisis panel Q&A. We're looking to host that in person, and as Lynn mentioned, it was going to be at the end of August. However, that's TBA at the moment, and hopefully we'll be able to get some dates out to you in relation to a September event. And so we welcome all new members. As I mentioned before, there are 2 levels of membership, Classic and Premium. Both have a lot of information on the website if you'd like to delve into more around what the membership entails. And Classic is really a great place to start and gives you access to all those free Torrens University courses that I mentioned before and discounted events. You get access to all the free online webinars and a directory listing on the BWA website as well. If you would like to host an event, be a speaker, or be featured in a BWA podcast show and in the annual Buzz magazine, you may want to consider becoming a premium level member, as this is designed to help amplify your message and elevate your professional brand. Premium level memberships, members are also available to those to have co-branding and collaboration, or ideas where you may want to ramp up your visibility and involvement as a leader in our national business women community. Lastly, we would like to thank our national partners of BWA, and without our partners, we would not be able to achieve so many events and opportunities to support the success of Australian women in business. BWA is a great brand and collective of women to partner with. So if you are keen to see your brand listed here as a patron, partner, collaborator, please get in touch. And the final slide is if you would like to ask anything about becoming a BWA member, if you have any questions around partnerships or ideas that you'd like to explore with BWA, please email Lynn Hawkins, who is our director, who's online today, and her contact details are there. And if you don't catch them right now, you can access Lynn's contact details via the Business Women Australia website. So that's it from me. Thank you so much to everyone for attending today. I hope you got lots of great ideas and took away lots of thoughts around the perspectives and the insights provided by our panel today. Thanks again. And once, as I said before, once the Sydney event in-person date is released, that will be on the BWA website and on LinkedIn and all the various other marketing channels. And we hope to see you there. And Sydney-siders, stay safe, and thanks so much again. Bye.